Ahaha, hey, it's your boy, COLONELDAMNEDERS. So yes, last week we did the best units for every faction, and the week before that we did the worst units for every faction, but it kind of got me thinking, if you had the exact same army comp, and two different legendary lords were leading it, which lord would be the best? So this is of course can take into account, magic, basic combat ability, items with the exception of the Sword of Cain, because, everyone can get that, but, legendary items that the lord can get themselves. And it got me thinking, which is going to be the worst and the best for every faction? Today we're going to focus on the worst. If you haven't guessed already, this is another one of those videos I did with the help of the Discord. They're a wonderful set of guys, they give me all the help, I give them no credit. It's a fantastic deal. If you'd like to consider joining it and helping out, I'd really appreciate that. I'd definitely give you no credit, so that sounds absolutely perfect. So yeah, link in the description if you want to join that. As I said, yes, this is going to be the worst legendary lords for leading the exact same army. Of course we're going to focus on campaign because, that's my entire gimmick, I'm the campaign guy. And yes, everything's going to come into effect, so spells, abilities, items with the exception of the Lord of Cain. Lord of Cain? The Sword of Cain. And this isn't if they are dueling, again, as I said, this is if they are leading the same army or a similar army that is very strong to them, which one's going to lead the army better and which one is not. Okay, let's get into this. Of course, have to mention, not all of these lords are bad, they are just the worst of the set that we have. So if I'm saying this lord is bad and he's your favourite or she's your favourite lord, don't get mad, it's just because they are the worst one out of the possible options. Now let's actually get into this. So starting off with the High Elves, as per usual, it's got to be Alarielle, and the only reason for it is because she's just a spellcaster and nothing else. She's pretty much a more expensive life spellcaster. Yes, I know she has some other spells that she has access to, but when it really comes down to it, the most useful ones are going to be the ones that let you heal. And if you are using her, you may as well use a Lawmaster or something, or maybe just one of the Archmages of Life. In fact, the Archmages being added to the game really screwed her over, because you have other options for magical people leading your armies now, so choosing Alarielle just doesn't really make sense. Now, while she is statistically better than Teclis in combat, her mounting and spells are they're just nothing compared to him. Teclis now has the Arcane Phoenix, which is a fantastic mount. He also has really great spells, whereas Alarielle has okay spells, and the Great Eagle has her best mount. Even the basic princes and princesses have access to 2 different dragons on top of the eagle, and Alarielle gets nothing. It's very sad. She's not great. Now, of course, you all know if Alarielle gets a hold of the Sword of Cain, she's a force to be reckoned with, but since we're not taking that into account, she's kind of the worst one. And again, it's not because she's particularly awful, it's because the other ones, just can do other things. Tyrion can fight literally everything. Elithanar can snipe literally everything. Eltharen's a great fighter. Imric can ride on dragons and just slaughter armies with ease. And Teclis, as I mentioned, is a better spellcaster. So unfortunately, Alarielle does end up kind of falling to the wayside and being the worst legendary lord for battle if she's leading an army, not in a duel. Yes, unfortunately. Sorry, Alarielle, love, but it's the way it is. Moving on to the High Elves cousins, the Druchii, the Dark Elves, the Edgelords. It's got to be Morathi. Thanks, I really appreciate that you picked this person for me to play when I did the Dark Elf playthrough, but oh boy, yeah, she's not great. It kind of does come down to the same thing as Alarielle. She is just a spellcaster, and while she does have access to quite a few spells, she has the Pit of Shades, a couple of ones from Law of Death, and a couple of ones from other laws, it's quite varied, and they are quite good spells, but when that's all she has going for her, she's kind of a little bit shit. And of course, with all spells, even though she has some that are really good, she has some that are really useless, and if you're going to use useless spells, you may as well just pick any of the other lords that have useless spells, the sorceresses, the supreme sorceresses. Malekith, he can cast spells, he's pretty good, in fact he's way better. Now she does have some nice abilities and items where whenever she's nearby to enemy units, they get reductions to, melee defense, melee attack, because she's so beautiful, apparently, enchanting beauty, that they can't attack her. I'll leave that one down to you. But personally, someone with black hands and who walks around bare feet in snow, it's probably not for me. And that hair, it's way too much in the morning. Can you imagine that? No, thank you. Yes, even though she has these abilities that make it so that whenever she's near combat, the people who are fighting against her are doing worse, she has about as much armor as she looks like she has, and she has no types of resistances, so any and all damage that hits her, it's going to hit her, and it's going to hurt quite a lot. So yeah, unfortunately Morathi, she's a good spellcaster, and she's a decent lord, but out of the 5 options, she's definitely the worst. Sorry love, but it's just come down to this. Now for the Lizardmen, it's tic-tac-toe. Do I really need to say anything other than that? It's so obvious that it's tic-tac-toe, he's just the worst. Yes, he has the good mobility because he gets to ride on his pterodon, and it'd be so good if it wasn't accessible to basic skink priests, to Halloween, most spellcasters that you can get that are heroes and not even lords, so you can have a fantastic melee fighting lord leading your army, and then a spellcaster that's on one of these as mobility, as well as spells, and the same combat prowess. He's nothing. I mean, and yes, I know he's a 3LC Lord, and his campaign mechanics are actually sort of interesting. You know, that thing where you can reset every single army's move range, so you can just move the entire length of the map in a single turn. That's pretty cool. But unfortunately, if you just isolate him, put him in battle, against pretty much any other legendary Lord, is not really going to win. Unless they have some ridiculous team comp where, you know, he can just fly in and slaughter everything. Yeah, he's not going to do too hot. He has 0 spells or abilities that make him even vaguely stand out. He's just very basic with an interesting mount that's no longer interesting because he's not the only one that has access to it. I'd say the only thing that he has going for him is the Death from Above ability. It's a fantastic explosion that can do quite a bit of damage and do some interesting effects to the units below him, and his attack damage is also pretty good. But unfortunately, everything else, it's whack. He has no armor, mediocre leadership, he's just a very basic Lord that, yes, he's 3LC, and unfortunately, for that reason, he is the worst Lord from Lizardmen for leading a battle into army. Sorry, Tic-Tac-Toe, but yeah, you're just not great. Now for the rats, we're going to see a bit of a trend here because it's Tretch again, and yes, I'm aware that he is another 3LC Lord, so it kind of makes sense that he's one of the worst ones, but to be honest, there's not really that much wrong with him. There's just not that much that makes him any better than any of the others. He has no mounts, no spells, so he's very slow and has no option to attack from range, which makes him into sort of a front lines character that just sits there with your other melee troops, and yes, he can do a lot of damage and get a few kills, but that's not really the Skaven way of leading. You know, the Skaven way of leading is, you know, if you're like Ikit Claw or Lord Skulk, you just kind of sit at the back and cast a load of spells, or riding on your Doom Wheel, or your, whatever you call it, the Screaming Bell. But to have no mounting options whatsoever, it's very strange and makes him very nothing, really. For some reason, he's an anti-large unit, so you'd think, oh, this is great, you know, I'll just send him against all the large units, you know, if I'm going against the Rats or the Dark Elves, send him off to find a Hydra, he'll be fine. But he won't, because he has no mounts, so the second he gets charged by anything large, he's just going to get knocked around the entire map, and then they're going to charge him again, knock him around, and he's never going to do any damage, he's just going to get knocked around and die, even to something that he should definitely win against, because he has no mass to keep him down. It just doesn't seem to make much sense. I do hope they come back and, you know, give him a bit of a, not a rework because it's a 3LC Lord, just a little retune, give him a couple of mounts, maybe, you know, just tweak him, maybe give him a few more abilities that make him a little more interesting, because as he is now, he's very basic and very boring, to be honest. He just doesn't have the combat prowess of Queek, the dueling capability of Snitch, the grossness of Skrulk, or the blatant overpoweredness that is Ikit Claw. He's just nothing. He's not particularly awful, it's just the other 4 are so good that it makes him just seem irrelevant. Now, for the Tomb Kings, it came down to Arkan the Black, and I was kind of looking at them all, and I couldn't really work out why, but it's another one of those where he's just the worst one by default. You know, he isn't the duelist that Khalida is. On that Serpent, she can fight pretty much anything one-on-one. She isn't, you know, Katep on his ridiculous Roomba that just fires shots forever. You know, a Lord that is an artillery piece? That is incredible. That is so good for leading an army. And he's not Cetra, because Cetra is Cetra and can just, you know, he just ruins lives, it's what he is. So if you're Arkan and you're going against any of these guys, they're going to whoop your dusty skeleton ass back into the Stone Age. He's nothing. You might be thinking, oh, well, he can cast spells, he's, you know, not too bad in combat, he's pretty tough. But yes, if you are going to pick a spellcasting, melee fighting, tough Lord, just pick Cetra, you dummy. He's way better. He might have, you know, slightly less armor, but he does a hell of a lot more damage, and his spells are actually very useful, especially for the Tomb King since it's their own law. Now, as I mentioned, Arkan does actually have very good armor, and he also has pretty good weapon strength. The unfortunate thing is, he doesn't really have that much armor-piercing weapon strength, so once you get past the early game, and units start to have more than like 10 armor, his damage just starts to drop off a cliff substantially, and he's left just doing nothing, whereas the other lords kind of can keep their momentum going further into the game and, you know, do more damage past turn 10. Now again, the Law of Death is actually a pretty good law, it's got some decent spells, but it's just not enough to bring him to where he needs to be that really, really, really good strong lord. He's just, again, he's not terrible, but he's definitely the worst of the 4, without a question. Now for the Vampire Coast, it of course has to be Aranessa Salt Shite. Yes, she's crap. She's terrible. I don't know why you'd ever play her. I mean, the Sartodes and Free Company are pretty good, and she actually has some pretty nice faction bonuses, but for Baal, she's useless. She's not even hot garbage. She's like room temperature garbage that's been sat in the processing plant for a couple of days and it's starting to turn to that mush. Yeah, she's that type of garbage. She has no cool mounts like the other Vampire Lords. You know, Noctis has his Necrofex, Celestra Diving has the big crab, Luther can get on a dragon, but what does she have? Oh, she has a Hermit Crab that every other hero and lord in the lore has access to. In the lore? In the faction, you know what I mean. Now by her design you think, oh, she's a great duelist lord, you know, she's got these swords on her legs, she's, you know, whipping a cutlass out and doing things. You think, oh, that's a really great dueling lord. But no, for some reason they decided to give her the similar damage that Tretch does, with a focus on anti-large. And as I mentioned with Tretch, if you are doing anti-large damage and you're not a larger target, you're just going to get knocked around by all the large targets that you're going after. So you can't do any anti-large damage. So what are you actually meant to do? Nothing. She's not good. It also doesn't help that she has no armor. Yes, she has physical resist, but if you ever want to upgrade her, put her on that crappy hermit crab mount, you lose that physical resist, gain a bit more armor, but overall, it arguably makes you worse. So the one mount she has access to that isn't unique makes her worse. Why? She's already terrible. She doesn't need this handicap. You don't need to shoot her in the knee just for trying to make her better. She needs something doing to her. Thing is, she's a DLC lord. She's paid lord. I know you get the other 3 lords, so you can kind of think, oh well, this one doesn't need to be as good. But no, she needs something doing to her. She needs a mount adding. She needs something. She needs to ride a giant sword if she's about that you can just plunge and stab everything. Because as she is now, she's useless. I don't know why you'd ever have her to lead an army. I'd rather have a generic lord. She's terrible.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message. Are you an epic gamer in search of some fashionable garments? You crave the attention of the lady, but in your ragged burlap loincloth she won't even give you the time of day? Introducing COLONELDAMNEDERS merchandise, the only way to go if you're trying to get into the lake of the lady. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, and even mugs in a variety of designs that are sure to garner you some divine favour. Every item also comes in a variety of colours, so you can pick one up for each day of the week to always be styling and profiling. You can even get stickers so you can add some pizzazz to anything. Your car, your computer case, hell, you can even stick one on your mother. So, if you want the confidence to commune with the lady, then there's no better way than to acquire some of the most epic merch this side of the internet. All the info you need is just mere clicks away in the description below. And now we return you to your regularly scheduled programming.
Now, for the Empire, for the elect counts, this was a tough one. This one had quite a lot of debate, because there were a lot of people that were a fan of this character because of his delightful, smooth, bald head and his fantastic moustache. And I have to agree, he is looking mighty fine. But, unfortunately, looking mighty fine does not translate to being a very good and useful legendary lord. Yes, we are talking about Volkmar the Grim. And yes, I know he's the most expensive lord, apparently, but he's also pretty much the worst. Like, yes, he has some nice spells, they're not spells, they are battle prayers, and nice abilities that are just bound spells, but battle prayers, whatever. But he's pretty much just an arch-lector that's more expensive, and kind of better looking. Yes, I know he has access to this War Altar of Sigmar, but if you become a large target, you become a large target for missiles. And yes, I know he gets missile resist and loads of armor and all this and all that, but when you are this big, a lot of those missiles are going to hit you, and they're going to start to hurt, it's going to stack up, and he's not going to last very long whatsoever. And yes, as I mentioned before, we all love his shiny bald head and his powerful stash, but that doesn't excuse how useless he is in every other way. He doesn't have the fighting capabilities of Karl and Toddy. Also, side note here, how is it that Toddy isn't a legendary lord of his own faction yet? I don't care about Volkmar, keep him as a second option for Karl. But Toddy? Bruh, he should have his own faction by now. I know he has his own faction, but we can't select it from the screen. Come on, Seer, what are you doing? But yes, he doesn't have the fighting capabilities of Karl or Toddy, he doesn't have the magical supremacy of Balthazar, and he doesn't have the sniping of Wolfheart, so he has nothing. Again, not that he's particularly bad, an Arch-Lector is a good lord and the battle prayers are very useful, but he just doesn't have anything special going for him. I'd rather just take an Arch-Lector because they're cheaper. Or maybe even one of the Warrior Priests because they're even cheaper, and I can have a nice lord lead my army. Now, for my favourite faction, the Vampire Counts, it's of course got to be Hellman's Mayonnaise Ghost. Yeah, he's terrible. My Mayo boy, whoo, he's bad. Feels real bad that the Grim and the Grave, both the lords that were added, have been in my worst lords list. That's not good. Yeah, that DLC, they did it dirty. Now, his entire gimmick is corpse carts. And we all know how I feel about corpse carts. They're terrible. He buffs them, he even rides one, and all of them, every single one, with the exception of the one that heals, that's pretty good. But most of them are terrible, and you're better off just having, a second spellcaster that can heal your unit, rather than a unit that just sits there and does nothing and passively heals. It's terrible. Don't get it. With that being said, his cart does get the full range of effects, it damages nearby enemy units, it heals nearby friendly units, it buffs units, it debuffs units, it's got all these things, but at the end of the day, it's still a corpse cart, so all you can do is sit there and do essentially no damage. And even though he has the fantastic effect where every unit in his army gets poison damage, it's just not worth it. He's just a terrible, terrible legendary lord. I don't know why you'd ever take him unless you're doing some sort of gimmick. The only thing that's good about him is he has access to the Lore of the Vampires, which, as we all know, is one of the most overpowered laws of magic in the entire game. And he also has the summon where he can get Graveguard, so that's pretty good. But apart from that, you might as well just go for literally anyone else. Go for Manny, go for Vlad, go for Isabella, go for the other guy, the Heinrich Kemmel guy. I've nearly forgot his name there, but I didn't. Yeah, go for any of them, because this guy's terrible. Now, for the short boys, the Dowie, the Dwarfs. This is going to probably upset some people, but we went for Ungrim. And before you say anything, it's not because Ungrim is bad. In fact, Ungrim is very good. The problem is, all of the Dwarf Lords are incredible. Grombrindle, that man is amazing. Thorgrim, also great. Belegar, pretty good. Ungrim, also pretty good. But what kind of came down to is that the Slayer King was just a little bit too much situational. Belegar, he might not be as good in anti-large situations. Ungrim can just go in, take on a lord that's riding a giant, and it doesn't stand a chance. But if the enemy doesn't bring any large targets, Ungrim just doesn't have it. Yes, he has a bit of armor-piercing damage, but his entire gimmick of fighting versus large is going to be completely useless because there's no large targets. You see? So pretty much the only reason that Ungrim lost out to Belegar is that Belegar is tough as nails. He has a buttload of armor, he has a silver shield, he's incredibly tough, he can stick around for a stupidly long time. And when the entire, Dwarven gimmick is just sticking around for as long as possible so that all your missile units can do all the damage, yeah, 9 times out of 10 Belegar wins. If we're going against a large army, then Ungrim is actually one of the best lords, but in most situations, he isn't. He's the worst. But I'm not going to try and milk him for more reasons why he's the worst. It's literally the only one. It's process of elimination, so I'm just going to leave it there. Bear with me, we're nearly there. Now, for the Greenskins, it's got to be Skarsnik, hasn't it? It's kind of obvious. Grimgor is a beast nowadays. Wurzag and Azhag can cast, and Grom is just... Whew. Grom's pretty hot. But Skarsnik he's not really got anything going for him. He has no mounting options, no spells, and in general combat, he's not exactly what you would call good. He's okay, he has kind of decent abilities, it let him hide his entire army, so if you're doing a sneak attack, kind of a Deathmaster Snake situation, then yeah, Skarsnik might be pretty good. But for the most part, he's the worst. If you had 2 armies going head to head, with like Grimgor or any of the other lords leading one and Skarsnik leading the other, yep, Skarsnik would lose. I would be willing to bet 9 times out of 10, unless you did something very special. But yeah, he's not great. He is another one of that gang that is, I'm anti-large, but I can't really fight large because I'm not large myself, so I get knocked around by anything that is large. He's part of that gang. So if you send him against any, giants, mammoths, horses, mounted lords, anything, he's going to definitely struggle. So it begs the question, why give him anti-large damage to begin with? Because he's not going to be able to do anything to the large targets. If the enemy knows that's properly cycle charge, he's going to get knocked around, they're going to go back, they're going to knock him around, go back, and then they can slaughter him. He's just not good. Yeah, there's not really that many reasons other than he's just nowhere near as good as the other ones. His abilities are okay, but not enough to pull him back. No spells, no mounts, anti-large damage that doesn't work. Yeah, he's not great. So if you're thinking of picking up the Greenskins for your first try, I'd probably give him a miss. Now for my definite favourite faction, Bretonnia. Oh, I just love cav and micromanagement, that's my favourite thing. Yes, the worst lord is Fey Enchantress. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, it's kind of obvious. Yeah, it really is. All the other lords can fight. She is literally a more expensive life caster with some tiny improvements and an interesting cup, and she can float. But apart from that, that's pretty much all she's got. Every other legendary lord can get into combat and fight very well. Fey Enchantress, she can get into combat and fight okay, but against anything that's kind of elite, she's gonna just eventually drop off and die. But all the other legendary lords can just do so much better than her, so I don't know why you'd ever bother taking her. And if you were going to take someone that can do what she can do, cast spells and the Law of Life and all that, just get either an elite prophetess to lead your army, I can't remember what they're called, or one of the lesser prophetesses to be a hero in your army alongside one of the other legendary lords, because they can cast the same spells and they're way cheaper, and you can have a lord that can actually do something other than just standing there. Now, again, it's not that she's actually terrible. In fact, support lords are some of the best lords in the game in certain situations, especially in campaign. But, if you are doing a head-to-head fight, the lord that can also fight on top of supporting your troops is going to win 9 times out of 10. So if all she can do is stand at the back and cast spells, eventually, when, the equally matched armies have tired each other out and are depleted, the lords will be the only things left and will be the deciding factor, and she will definitely lose out to a lord that can also fight. It's very disappointing, but it's also kind of predictable. She just has no versatility and can't really contribute other than the occasional spell and standing there with buffs. Now, coming to our final Warhammer 1 DLCs, these ones are going to go quite quick because it's kind of obvious and also there's not really that many options, so keep up if you can. For Norska, it's Throg, pretty much because he can't ride a war mammoth and because Wulfric can do other things other than, being a big troll and moving around. Like, he's not actually bad, but when you compare the two, Wulfric is just more versatile, can get mounts, can do many more things than Throg can because Throg He's pretty much limited to exactly as you get him at the start of the game. He's never really going to improve. He's just going to be a troll that swings his hammer. Yes, he does a lot of damage, but Wulfric just eventually gets better. For the Wood Elves, Durthu. And again, it's one of those things where he's just not versatile. A tree man is a good unit, but he's just a tree man. Yes, he can cast spells, and yes, he can go in and do a lot of damage, but he just has nothing other than that. If he has units from range, all he can do is lumber slowly after them, like that wood-based pun there. I thought it was pretty good. Whereas Orion can, actually fire projectiles at these range units and take them out, or he can move quite quickly. He can also fight in melee. He can also do some interesting abilities, do a lot of damage. Yeah, Durthu is just a big range target, and between the two of them, if they're in a fight versus each other, Durthu might do a lot more damage to the front lines, but Orion and all his range units at the back can snipe Durthu before he can do anything about it. For the Beastmen, it's got to be Morgur. He has worse stats in battle than Khazrak, and has no spells, whereas Malagor does. So what does he really do? He's not a very good fighter, he's not a caster, he can't really be a support unit if he has no spells, so I'm not exactly sure how you're supposed to use him, so you shouldn't. Get it? Good. This is another one of those that's very straightforward because he just does nothing better than any of the other lords. He's not particularly abysmal per se, but he's also the worst out of all the options, even probably the basic Beast Lord, because he just does nothing. Finally, we get to Chaos, and again, Sigvold is just taking all these because it's definitely him. Archeon's a fantastic spellcaster, can get mounts, can whoop ass, chew bubblegum, all these things. Kolek is... well, he's Kolek. He can, he can hit things with his hammer. He can literally eat Sigvold for breakfast. And what can Sigvold do? He can duel, okay, I guess. He can do some okay damage. He's got good defense, so he's quite tough. That's about it. He doesn't really do much damage. He doesn't have any spells. He doesn't really have that many abilities, anything useful. He's just kind of nothing. Maybe we'll see a change in Warhammer 3 when they rework Chaos, but for now he's pretty garbage. But yes, that concludes the list. We finally did it. Congratulations, guys. High fives all around. Yeah, there we go. Just I hope you enjoyed this list. If you did, then be sure to leave a like and a comment saying, oh, well, this is very good. This Legendary Lord, he is pretty terrible. I think they should do something. I think they should do this. And I'll be sure to, take a look at those ideas, claim them as my own, and then probably make a video about them in a couple of months. Sounds epic. If you did not like this list and you disagree and you think, actually, this Lord is the worst, or this Lord is the best, then be sure to leave that in the comments down below, and I would appreciate that so much. I love when you all bully me. It's a truly wonderful feeling to know that you've made it, so that enough that people bully you because they're so upset with your opinions. Oh, it's wonderful. So yes, be sure to do that. One last plug of myself. If you want to see me stream, I've been doing some View Battle live streams. They're pretty fun. Head on over to DLive, follow the channel, or just join the Discord and you'll know when I'm going live from there. So be sure to do that. It's an epic time. I meant to have a schedule, but I don't really. It's just kind of 2 hours a week whenever I feel like it. Normally around 4, but the days, it changes weekly because I have such a terrible plan. So the best way to know is hop into Discord or heading over to the channel and give it a follow, and you'll know exactly when I go live, and it should be an epic time. You can come and absolutely throttle me at Warhammer 2 online battles because I'm terrible. The tournament also, I know it is coming. I've picked the entrance, I'm in contact with them. I'm just waiting for them to send me their army comps so I can send them off to battle, so I can get the battles back, so I can make the videos. It's okay, I'm probably going to get on top of this. And the Warriors of Chaos Guide, yes, I know, it needs to be done. I'm going to hopefully start doing it fairly soon, so, just be patient, and I'll try and get to you as soon as possible. Yes, I believe that covers everything, so for now, I've been Killer Keemstar, and let's get right into the outro.